Welcome to the Stay Clean and Safe podcast, created with the financial support of the European Union. Here we share ideas, tips, and stories that will help us build healthy, safe, and clean communities together. Let's get started. Welcome to our podcast. Today we have Lejla with us. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
To begin with, what does work life balance actually mean?
When we talk about work life balance, most people immediately think of a 50-50 split, but that doesn't exist. So, balance really means that we have the opportunity to be active at work, but also in our private lives, which means that we are not bored and do not suffer.
Why is this balance particularly important for young people who are just entering the job market?
It is important because when we talk about young people, you are at the beginning of your careers. You are forming your work habits. If these work habits are not formed correctly, then in the future this will become apparent through the consequences of burnout or some other possible mental disorders.
What are the most common challenges young people face in finding balance?
Time management, also environmental pressure, and enormous responsibilities. I would also say young people are in the early stages of forming their work habits. If they don't have the space to think, and if they don't have the ability to teach themselves discipline at this time, that work must be done. And then also have time for their private lives, of course, it won't work out.
Why do we feel that we always have to be available? Is it pressure from our environment, our employers, or ourselves?
I would say it is all three components that you just mentioned. Of course, we have to be available because our environment pressures us to be hardworking, to have good work habits, to be disciplined, to have a variety of habits. You know that you are reachable and accessible so that your employer can praise you. Of course, there is also pressure from your personality. If you are a typological personality who really strives for perfectionism or is very ambitious, then, of course, you also put pressure on yourself to go.
How can we recognize that we are overworked or losing our balance?
I always say there are physical, emotional, and cognitive signs. For example, memory loss, tremors, nausea, a complete loss of energy and interest in socializing, in friends, in family, in activities that you always actively participated in, but also emotionally, in the form of outbursts, or conversely, you no longer show your emotions to others. This means all three components. It is expressed emotionally, cognitively, and physically. If we see one component or that it is full of it, of course we need to seek help.
How we can set healthy boundaries, for example, regarding working hours or availability?
I always say, young people, but also those of us who from other generations, take a look at that. This is especially important at the beginning when the contrast is still on the table. If you see that your employer offers flexible working hours for your well being, at least one happy hour, as we say, during which you can go to the gym or whatever. You don't have that micromanagement. This means that as a person who is just starting their career, you have to set healthy boundaries for yourself, for your whole life. Because of this, never allow yourself, but also others, to micromanage, to cross the boundaries of your life. You can also stand up for yourself and say that we are currently in a more hybrid environment. So we can say that we also have flexible working hours. So it is not necessary to work from 7 to 3 or 7 to 5 anymore. Because now this whole period is based on the fact that we have more quality than quantity, which means more quality work than quantity, or how many hours we have spent.
How exactly does this affect our mental health and general well being?
When we talk about mental health, well being at work, well being in our private lives, there is at least one component that if has gone down, even just a little, we also feel it in our mental health. This means that mental health suffers. If there is no well being at work, this means that there are no healthy boundaries, that there is no workplace in which you, as a person, an employee, can grow and have an open mindset towards others. but also towards work and everything else that you cannot be productive or flexible. Because it means that if it affects your mental health, it will also affect your productivity and everything else. So, mental health is the most important component of a person's entire life.
Is it true that we are more productive when we have a good balance between work and leisure time?
Of course, productivity always stems from how relaxed we are, how well we sleep, and whether we have eaten well. Of course, because food is very important for the brain. If we don't have time to eat at least one healthy meal, it means that our brains cannot evaluate themselves again, cannot grow. We cannot think, we may experience memory loss, loss of concentration, and this really affects that. So, of course, productivity is very much related to balance. And the most important thing about balance, if you want it, is to set boundaries. If you set boundaries, we achieve balance.
How do you personally take care of your balance?
It has been a very difficult journey. And today I would say from this time, because as a mother of two children, with all my responsibilities and my job, but it is very important, and I have set myself goals to find 30 minutes for myself every day. And those 30 minutes are really just for me. I have set appropriate boundaries in my private life. I'm still working on my boundaries in my professional life, but it is very important to be aware of where the mistakes are. And perhaps from my own experience, I would say not someone who works and deals with the well being of the celestial team from their own experience. Setting boundaries and those who set boundaries are the most emotionally stable people and are truly productive and successful in their professional lives.
Have you ever experienced or come close to burnout yourself?
Oof, of course, especially really close, so that's obvious. At the time when you're a student, you have a child, then you have another child. You take a break from maternity leave, you finish one doctorate, you enroll in another doctorate. Of course, there is an outburst where you can no longer remember exactly where you are. So, of course, I also experienced this once. For example, I came to work and I didn't even realize that I had come to work. What did you learn from this? I learned that employees can be replaced. My children will grow up. Of course, they grow every day. But if I don't take care of myself and improve my own life, what can I expect? Because, as I always say, we can all live without everything, but we can't live without each other because we are very connected and I can't leave this body, nor can my spirit. So if I don't take care of the quality of my mental health with physical health, I cannot expect good mental health, good physical health, or very high quality of life, which is the most important thing. We all strive for that.
What advice would you give to young people who feel lost or trapped by their obligations?
I think that at least once in our lives we all feel that way, that we are trapped by our obligations. I always say my advice this week is to do the most urgent things, and then I will rest more. The most urgent things, really do them. If there are three obligations, I always set five. Those five this week, everything else can wait. I apologize, but everything can wait. So that I can at least relieve myself or get rid of this feeling that I'm lost between obligations and my life. So set yourself the most urgent tasks. The most urgent tasks for this week, the rest can wait. And so you go from week to week until you get rid of that feeling. And of course, physical activity is very important for getting rid of that lost concept. So, yes, or rather, that feeling.
Is there anything we can do ourselves, at least one small step today, and what would that be?
Absolutely. Deep breathing exercises, a warm bath, and turn the music up as loud as you can today. I know we have a lot of strict rules and laws in Slovenia, but music really is a solution, like therapy. So give yourself at least 40 minutes for yourself. That's for today. So every day you will do what suits your best. You have a lot of advice, and I always say, just read it. But if we look at ourselves, we feel it because we are intuitive beings. We feel that what we need. If that's what it is, then go for a drink. Go for a drink. If you'll be happier and more satisfied after the drink, so each individual can determine for themselves what they need most.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you for listening to Stay Clean and Safe, a project funded by the European Union. Remember, small steps lead to big changes in keeping the world clean and safe. Be honest and be safe.